You know how people always say the last day of school is supposed to be the happiest? All the tests are done, summer's waiting outside the door, and you're walking around collecting cheesy notes in your yearbook from people you'll barely talk to again. But for me, my last day of 8th grade changed my life forever. It started like any other final school day. Hallways packed with excited kids, laughter echoing through every corridor. Teachers had basically given up trying to teach. Everyone was signing yearbooks and posing for selfies like we were celebrities. The school even let us bring snacks into homeroom. It was perfect. At least it was, until I flipped through my yearbook that afternoon. I had just gotten home and dropped my backpack in the kitchen when I opened it, eager to see what everyone had written. Page after page was filled with the usual stuff. "Have a great summer," or "Don't forget me," scribbled in various colors. Then, on the third page, I saw it, scrawled in thick, uneven black ink just under a photo of a kid I didn't recognize. "We're not done yet. See you soon, M.A." I froze. The signature was just the letter M. I didn't know anyone by that name. The handwriting didn't match any of my friends, and what really messed with my head was that the page wasn't one I had passed around. That section of the yearbook had never left my backpack. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was some weird prank, maybe a friend messing with me, but deep down something felt off. That night, my friend Chris came over for one last sleepover before summer. We had a tradition: pizza, video games, and trying to stay up all night. Around 1:30 a.m., we were watching dumb YouTube clips when we heard it. 3 loud knocks, not from the front door. From the basement window, Chris muted the TV instantly. We stared at each other. Knock, knock, knock. Again, slow, deliberate, the kind of knock that didn't sound like someone joking around. I live in the suburbs. Our basement window faces a narrow alley between our house and the neighbor's fence. No one should be there, especially not after midnight. Chris got up first. He crept toward the window, crouching low. I followed behind him, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. He peeled the curtain back just a sliver. There was a boy standing outside. Not a man, not a shadow, a boy. Maybe our age, maybe a little older. Pale skin, dark hair matted to his forehead. He was standing way too close to the glass, like his nose was nearly touching it. He looked dead at us and smiled. Chris yelped and fell back. I stood up and yelled, "Who the hell are you?" The boy didn't answer. He just raised his hand and tapped on the glass with one finger. Tap, tap, tap. That's when I saw it, his other hand. He was holding something, a copy of our school's yearbook. I ran upstairs to get my parents, but by the time they came down, the boy was gone. No footprints, no sign of him at all. We called the cops, who did a lazy sweep of the area and said it was probably just a neighbor's kid playing a prank. But I knew better. The next morning, I checked the school's online directory and asked around about kids with names starting with M. Nothing matched. The weirdest part? There was no student in our grade with that face. I double-checked. That page where I found the message, that student wasn't listed anywhere else. No name, no other photos. It was like he'd never even gone to our school. A few days later, the school year officially ended. We forgot about it, or tried to. I pushed it out of my mind. Until 2 weeks into summer, when I woke up one morning and found a sticky note pressed to my bedroom window from the outside. It read, "This story happened during my senior year of high school, and I haven't told many people about it. Not because I don't want to, but because most people wouldn't believe it. It was the last day of school, late afternoon. The final bell had already rung, and most students had taken off within minutes. Some were in the parking lot blasting music, others loading up their cars for summer road trips, and a few were still roaming the halls grabbing signatures in their yearbooks. I was one of those kids who never liked big crowds, so instead of rushing out, I decided to hang back and take one last walk through the school. I guess I was feeling sentimental. I had practically grown up in those hallways. My locker was in the far wing, right near the old gym, the side of the school that had been closed for months. There was a long-standing rumor that part of that wing was condemned or had a mold infestation or something, but nobody really knew. What we did know was that no students were allowed past the chain-link divider bolted into the hallway. I'd never seen anyone go in or come out except for one person, Mr. Walton, the night custodian. He was an older guy, quiet, always wore the same faded blue jumpsuit and shuffled a squeaky cart full of cleaning supplies. Every night for the past 2 years, I'd see him disappear down that blocked-off hallway like it was normal. No one ever questioned him. We just avoided that side of the school. It gave everyone the creeps. That day, as I walked past the divider, I heard something weird. A voice. "You shouldn't be here." I turned. Mr. Walton was standing there, mop in hand, just behind the divider. His eyes were wide, and his voice didn't match the calm, slow-spoken janitor I'd grown used to. It sounded almost panicked. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Just doing one last lap before I'm out of here." but he didn't smile. Instead, he walked closer to the divider and leaned in. He whispered, "They don't like it when it's quiet. They wake up." I froze. "Who wakes up?" I asked, trying to keep it light like he was just being weird. But he didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his cart and pulled out a worn, dusty hall pass. It looked ancient, like it had been sitting in a drawer for decades. He pushed it through a gap in the divider. "Take this," he said. "If anything happens, show them this. They'll leave you alone." I stared at it. The paper was brittle and the ink had faded. There was a name scribbled in cursive I couldn't read. "Is this a joke?" I asked, half laughing. Mr. Walton didn't answer. He just backed into the hallway and vanished into the darkness. A second later, the lights flickered above me. Now our school building was old. Flickering lights were nothing new. But this was different. They didn't just flicker once. They began to strobe, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Then a slam from the old gym doors. I dropped the pass. The doors at the far end of the corridor cracked open, just a few inches. I took a step back. Then another slam, louder this time, and a second set of doors, on the opposite side of the hallway, began to open too. It felt like the entire hallway was breathing. Every light flickered in sync, and suddenly it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Then I saw them. Hands. Thin, pale hands reaching around the edge of the open gym doors. Too many fingers. No sound, no growl, no whisper, just movement. I turned and ran. I don't remember how long I sprinted, but I didn't stop until I reached the main office and burst in, startling the secretary. She asked if I was okay. I lied and told her I thought I saw someone messing around in the locker hallway. She just nodded and said the cameras would catch it. I didn't mention the hands, or the flickering lights, or Mr. Walton. That night I couldn't sleep. I woke up around 2:40 a.m. to the sound of scraping, like metal being dragged across pavement. I looked out my bedroom window. There, in my driveway, was a blue janitor's cart, empty. No one around, just sitting there, silent. I didn't go outside. The next morning I told my parents about it. My dad went outside and checked. The cart was gone. No tracks, nothing on the cameras. A week later, I visited the school to drop off a form for graduation. I asked the front desk clerk if Mr. Walton was around. She looked confused. "We haven't had a Mr. Walton on staff for over 15 years. This happened back in high school, on the very last day of junior year. The final bell had already rung, but my ride home was running late. It was raining, and most of the students had already scattered. I remember the halls being unusually quiet, with only a few people left, some waiting by the front entrance, others chatting in the cafeteria. I was sitting outside the music room, scrolling on my phone, waiting for my older brother to pick me up. That hallway had always creeped me out a bit. It was darker than the rest of the school, probably because the lights were always dimmed and the windows were narrow and high. After about 10 minutes of silence, I started to hear music. Faint piano notes, slow, uneven, like someone was practicing scales or just randomly pressing keys. The thing is, there wasn't supposed to be anyone in there. Our music teacher, Mr. Harlan, had left hours ago, and the room was supposedly locked. I got up and stepped closer to the door. The sound grew louder. It wasn't a song, it was just 3 notes being repeated, again and again and again. I peeked through the narrow window in the door. At first, I couldn't see anything. The lights were off, but the window gave just enough view of the grand piano sitting near the center. Then, something moved. There was someone sitting at the piano, a girl. Long black hair, pale hands, a dark school hoodie that looked too big for her. She was playing slowly, still those same 3 notes. She wasn't hunched over like most people when they play. She sat perfectly still, like she wasn't really there, almost like a mannequin. I knocked lightly on the glass. No response. I tried again. Nothing. That's when I noticed something that chilled me. Her fingers weren't moving. She wasn't actually playing. But the notes, they were still playing. The piano keys weren't moving. Her hands were still. But the sound was real. I could hear it. I stepped back. Something about the way she was sitting, how still she was. It made me feel sick. I turned to leave, but that's when the door clicked. It opened, just a crack. No one had touched it. I hadn't heard a key or a latch. It just opened, by itself, and the music stopped. I didn't move. The hallway was dead silent. Then I heard it, a whisper right next to my ear. "Come in." I spun around. No one was behind me, but when I looked back toward the door, she was gone. The piano bench was empty. The lights were still off. I ran. I didn't even stop to grab my bag. When my brother arrived, I barely said a word the whole ride home. Later that night, something even weirder happened. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, all I heard were those same 3 notes, played slowly, exactly like before. Then the call ended. I tried calling back, but the number wasn't in my call log. It was like it never existed. The next day, I returned to pick up my stuff. I asked Mr. Harlan if anyone had been in the music room yesterday after school. He said no. In fact, he said the room was still locked when he opened it this morning. That didn't make sense. I told him I'd seen someone in there playing. He paused for a long moment, then said something that really stuck with me. Back when I first started here, they told me never to leave the piano uncovered. Said it attracts things. I thought it was just an old superstition. Guess maybe it wasn't. I asked what he meant by attracts things, but he brushed it off like a joke. I never walked past that hallway again. To this day, I still hear those 3 notes in my head whenever I'm in a silent room. Sometimes I wonder if she ever really stopped playing. This happened on the very last day of freshman year, and I swear it's the kind of thing that sticks with you, burns itself into your memory in a way you can't explain. It was right after final period. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, tossing papers in the air, screaming goodbyes across the halls. You could feel the relief, the energy. Summer was just hours away. Me and my best friend Jordan were by our lockers, which were all the way at the end of the west wing, an old hallway barely used anymore. Our school had recently done renovations, and most of the freshman lockers had been relocated, but ours, somehow, had been missed. That wing had a bad rep. Teachers called it Dead Hall. The lights always buzzed, flickering like they were barely hanging on. It smelled weird, like damp concrete and old textbooks, and most of the classrooms in that section had been closed permanently due to black mold. The lockers there were all rusted and creaky, but Jordan and I didn't mind. In fact, we thought it was kind of cool, our own little corner of the school. That day, as we were grabbing our yearbooks, Jordan nudged me and pointed to a locker a few feet down. Locker 3119. It was wide open. That caught us both off guard because that locker had always been sealed shut. I'm serious. No one used it. Not this year, not the year before. And believe me, we tried opening it plenty of times. The latch was jammed. We even once kicked it trying to force it open. But now, it was hanging wide open like it had been used all along. We walked over. Jordan was grinning like an idiot, already assuming one of the janitors must have finally forced it open. Inside, there was only one thing. A small notebook, black cover, no markings, just sitting there. Jordan grabbed it and flipped it open. The pages were filled with names. Dozens, maybe hundreds of names. I didn't recognize any of them. Jordan flipped through a few more, and then we stopped on one in the middle. My name. Written perfectly, first and last. In handwriting, that wasn't mine, and definitely wasn't Jordan's. Jordan's smile faded instantly. "Dude," he said, "I swear this wasn't in here earlier this week." He flipped again. His name was there too. That's when we both started feeling it, like the temperature in that hallway had dropped. Suddenly we heard a loud clang behind us. We turned around. The door to one of the sealed classrooms had slammed shut. Thing is, it had been padlocked since last semester. Another noise, a low creak. We turned back to the locker. The notebook was gone. Gone. Jordan looked at me like he was about to throw up. He reached inside the locker again. Nothing, just air. And then, in the corner of the locker, a small square of paper began to curl up. I pulled it out. It said one word. Run! We didn't think. We just ran. Down the hallway, past the lockers, past the dark classrooms. We didn't stop until we hit the cafeteria, where students were still laughing, taking selfies, saying their goodbyes. I looked back at the hallway. It was still empty, but I knew something had changed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that notebook. My name. Around 2 a.m., Jordan texted me. "Jordan, check your front door." I got up and walked to the porch. There, sitting on the welcome mat, was the black notebook. Same cover, same pages. I opened it. There were only 2 names inside now. Mine, Jordan's, and one line at the bottom. "One of you has to go back." I ran inside, slammed the door, told my parents everything. They thought it was some end-of-year prank. But Jordan, he went back. I begged him not to. But the next day, he said he had to see for himself. He went to the school, snuck into Dead Hall. That was the last time I ever saw him. The school claimed he never showed up. The security cameras glitched that morning. No footage, no explanation. They said he probably ran away, that he was troubled. But I know what happened. He went back, and the notebook took him. This story happened back in 2014, on the last day of 6th grade. It was one of those early dismissal days. Everyone was excited, shouting and tossing their backpacks over their shoulders like the weight of the entire school year had just disappeared. I remember standing in line with my little group, waiting for the bus like we did every afternoon, but something felt a bit off. Our usual bus driver, Ms. Lenny, wasn't there. Instead, we were greeted by a man. Tall, thin, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. He didn't say a word when we boarded, just opened the door and nodded. I remember thinking it was weird how silent the whole ride started. No jokes, no music, not even that low humming of the radio Ms. Lenny always kept on. I sat with my best friend Sean near the back. He leaned in and whispered, "Is it just me, or is this not our regular route?" I looked out the window. He was right. We'd passed the Mackenzie gas station 5 minutes ago, and our bus never went that far. Another turn, then another. Now we were somewhere completely unfamiliar, wooded, back road, empty. Sean stood up and walked to the front of the bus. He asked the driver where we were going. The man didn't answer. He didn't even blink, just kept driving. That's when Sean noticed something and turned back to me, pale as a sheet. "Dude, there's no bus number. The panel's empty." I looked. The small sign above the driver's seat that always displayed our bus number, blank, like it had never been used. Sean yelled at the guy to stop. Some of the younger kids in the middle rows started getting nervous. One even began to cry. And still, no answer. Just the hum of the engine and the slow turns into deeper and darker roads. I ran to the emergency exit at the back, tried to lift the latch, locked, tried kicking it. Nothing. Sean and I were shouting now. Other kids started panicking. Some were trying to call their parents, but none of the phones had any service. We were completely cut off. And then the bus stopped, dead in the middle of a clearing. No houses, no roads, just trees. The driver stood up slowly and turned around. What I saw still haunts me. His eyes weren't right, completely black. Not like black irises, like he had no eyes at all. Just two pits. His face was expressionless, but something about it felt ancient, hollow. He pointed down the aisle, past us, toward the back emergency door, then said in the deepest voice I've ever heard, "This is where the ride ends." That door, the one that was jammed minutes earlier, it clicked. Opened on its own. I swear the temperature dropped instantly. I could see my breath inside the bus. And outside that open door, just fog, a thick white mist that you couldn't see 5 feet into. Nobody moved. Not a single soul. Until a little girl, Kara I think her name was, stood up like she was in a trance. Started walking to the back. Sean grabbed her arm and shouted, "No, don't go out there!" The driver screamed, like an inhuman roar, and the lights on the bus exploded in sparks. That finally snapped everyone out of it. We all ran forward, slammed into the main exit door, and just like that, it flew open. We scattered, into the woods, onto gravel. Some of us stuck together, some ran alone. I remember tripping in a ditch and scraping my palms raw, but I didn't stop. Eventually I hit pavement, a real road, and I saw a gas station up ahead, lights on. I ran in, panting and shaking, told the clerk everything. He stared at me for a second, then said, "Kid, the school buses haven't used that road in over 10 years. The cops were called, search parties sent out. They found the rest of the kids within a few hours, all of them terrified, scattered through the woods. But the bus? Never found, not even a tire track. And the driver? They said Ms. Lenny had called in sick that morning, but no one remembered assigning a substitute. The district had no record of a replacement driver. The authorities chalked it up to a miscommunication. But every single one of us that rode that bus that day knows the truth. That wasn't a miscommunication. That was something else. Something that wanted us. This story isn't just a weird memory. It's something I've tried to explain away for years, but every time I think about it, my stomach twists. Because I still can't figure out if it actually happened, or if we were pulled into something else that day. It was the last day of junior year, and the schedule was shortened. You know, half days, yearbook signings, people crying in the halls like it was some kind of dramatic goodbye, even though we'd be back in a few months. But our last class of the day was something different. It was English, 6th period. We were watching a movie, Dead Poets Society or something, and counting down the final minutes. The classroom clock ticked to 2:35 p.m. The bell rang. Yeah, but nothing happened. Like no announcements, no hallway noise, no one stood up. It was like the bell never existed. Our teacher, Ms. Holloway, paused the movie and said, "That's odd." She glanced at her watch, frowned, and said, "The bell rang, but nobody else is leaving?" We all laughed, thinking maybe the system glitched or there was an announcement coming. She opened the classroom door to check the hallway. It was dead silent. I don't just mean empty. I mean absolutely silent. No footsteps, no doors slamming, no echo. Even the air felt still. She looked back at us, clearly unsettled. "Stay here," she said, and stepped out. The door clicked shut behind her. And that was the last time we saw Ms. Holloway. We waited. 10 minutes, 15, 20. No one returned. Eventually, one of the kids, Evan, got up and peeked into the hallway. He looked back at us with this blank expression. I asked him what he saw. "There's no one out there," he whispered. So we followed. We walked the halls of the entire floor. Every classroom was empty. The cafeteria, abandoned. The front office, Lights off. No teachers. No students. It was like the school had been abandoned in an instant, but everything else was left behind. Lunch trays, purses, backpacks, even phones. And here's where things got really weird. Every window we looked through, dark. Like pitch black. Not just nighttime dark. Like the windows weren't even showing the real world. Just empty black space. One girl tried calling her mom. No signal. Not even no service. Just a loading icon that spun endlessly. We decided to try the front doors. Locked. We tried breaking the glass with a chair. It bounced off. Evan said something like, "It's like we're not even in our world anymore." Nobody laughed, because that's exactly what it felt like. Eventually, we made our way back to our classroom, thinking maybe this was a drill or some weird prank. But when we opened the door, it wasn't our room anymore. Same number, same door, but inside it was different. The lights were dim, the walls were cracked, the floor, rotted wood instead of linoleum. It looked like the school had been abandoned for decades. There were cobwebs everywhere, dust thick enough to choke on. And in the front of the classroom, something was written on the chalkboard. "You shouldn't have stayed after the bell." A girl started crying. One of the guys tried to run, but the hallway behind us was now a wall. I'm not exaggerating. Where we had just walked minutes ago was now a solid brick wall. We were trapped. Some kids screamed. One passed out. I honestly don't even remember what I was doing. I was frozen. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't feel my fingers. Then we heard it. A bell, but not the school bell. A low, distorted version of it. Distant and mechanical, like it was echoing through a tunnel. And footsteps. Not from the hallway, but from inside the walls. Scratching, then knocking. Then a voice. "Time's up." The lights snapped off. Someone screamed. I felt a hand grab mine, but when I looked, no one was there. Everything after that is a blur. I woke up in the nurse's office with a migraine and a bloody nose. All the other students were there too, everyone dazed, some crying, some silent like they'd seen a ghost. Ms. Holloway? Gone. She never came back to school. Ever. They said she had a medical emergency, but no one believed that, not after what we saw. We didn't talk about it much after that. The school had some kind of hush-up meeting with our parents, told them we were part of a gas leak incident that caused temporary hallucinations. But I don't believe that. Not for a second. I still go back to that classroom sometimes, just to see. It's normal now. Fluorescent lights, clean floors, students chatting. But sometimes, if I stay long enough after the bell, I swear I can still hear that voice. Time's up. I'm not the kind of person who believes in the paranormal. I'm not superstitious, and I always try to find a logical explanation before jumping to conclusions. But after what happened on the last day of school my senior year, I don't know what I believe anymore. That day was uneventful at first. Typical end-of-year stuff. Everyone was goofing off, yearbooks were flying around, and people were hugging like we weren't going to see each other again in 2 months. I had stayed behind with 2 of my close friends, Nate and Olivia, to help our photography teacher clean up the media lab. We were part of the yearbook team and had left some of our gear behind after submitting the final files. It was around 5:40 p.m. when we were finally done. The rest of the school had cleared out by then. Even our teacher had already left. We exited through the back hallway, and that's when we saw Mr. Delaney, the night janitor. He was old, soft-spoken, and always wore headphones while cleaning. He gave us a nod and said something I'll never forget. "Didn't know anyone was still here. I just locked the north wing. You 3 were the last ones, right?" We nodded. Nate even joked, "Unless there's a ghost still editing yearbook photos." Mr. Delaney didn't laugh. He just stared for a second, then said, "Make sure you don't go down past the science wing. We don't open that hall after 5. We were confused. The science wing was part of the main building. Why was it off limits? But we shrugged it off. We left through the east stairwell, or at least we tried to. When we pushed the exit door open, it was pitch black outside. And I don't mean nightfall, I mean nothing, like the door opened into complete void. Olivia pulled out her phone. No service, no Wi-Fi. And the time? 5:41 p.m. That was impossible. We'd walked the entire hall and staircase in what had to be 5 to 7 minutes, but the clock hadn't moved. We closed the door and exchanged nervous glances. Nate said maybe we should try the front entrance instead, so we walked back toward the lobby. But the second we reached the central hall, the lights flickered out. Boom, total darkness, the kind that feels alive. We pulled out our phones again to use the flashlights, and that's when we heard it. Footsteps, fast, heavy, coming from the direction of the science wing. We all stopped moving. The steps stopped too. Nate whispered, "Delaney?" But we knew it wasn't him. He always wheeled a cleaning cart that squeaked when he moved. This was different, fast, almost panicked. Then came the knocking. 3 sharp knocks against a metal locker, followed by the sound of something dragging, like someone pulling their nails across the length of it. We turned to run, only to see the hallway behind us now looked longer than before, like it had stretched. I know how that sounds. I know it's crazy. But the lockers seemed to go on for miles, and every step we took felt like we were stuck in place. We started running, full sprint. I don't know how, but we ended up back at the photography lab, the same one we had just cleaned. Only, it wasn't the same. The lights were blue-tinted, humming unnaturally. The computers were on, all of them, displaying static screens. In the center of the lab was a yearbook. Just one. Open to the senior class photo page. Except, the faces were gone. Just white ovals where the heads should have been, all except 3 photos. Mine, Nate's, Olivia's. I reached out to touch the page. The screen on the nearby computer blinked to life and displayed a message. Last to leave, first to stay. Then another. You shouldn't have ignored the warning. Olivia screamed and backed away, knocking over a chair. Nate rushed to the door, but it wouldn't open. Locked, sealed tight. The screen flickered again, showing the live feed of the hallway outside. And in that grainy black and white footage, someone was walking toward the lab, slow, deliberate, dragging something long and thin behind them. The figure passed directly under the camera. They were wearing a school uniform from the 90s, not even the current design, and their face was blank. No features, just smooth, pale skin like a mannequin's. Then it stopped, looked straight into the camera, and the feed went dead. The room plunged into total darkness again. We didn't speak. We didn't scream. We just stood there, listening to the soft knock, knock, knock at the lab door. I don't remember how we got out. When we opened our eyes, we were sitting outside the school building, yearbook on the ground, pages torn out. It was 6:03 p.m. The school looked normal. Cars were pulling in, people going about their day. No one believed our story, of course, but when we asked to see Mr. Delaney, they told us he'd retired months ago.